hire backlist. Remember that? We pretty well went through it before how we're going to do it. What I'm getting at home is my people want to know why these folks were let go or fired, or for whatever reason they're gone, and they're not supposed to be rehired by state government. But if we have elder abuse, sex abuse, and they're on a do not hire list or a blacklist for the state of Iowa, they can be rehired in private enterprise or private facilities back home in our state. Can we get the unredacted copies of this information without the name and address of the person involved? I mean, we see this all the time. You got papers that are redacted here and there, and can we get the name and address of a person involved with all the information there, so if we have to, we could go back to a judge and find out who they were?
In my opinion, that's a question best posed to the Attorney General's office.
You guys have never asked the Attorney General whether all this information you've been providing?
The Attorney General's office has been involved in what's been released. I can tell you that. I do not know.
You'll have to say that a little louder.
The Attorney General's office has been involved in assisting us with releasing information. So whatever has been released in redacted form has occurred at the request with the approval of the Attorney General's office.
Yeah, and I've not been involved in that process, sir.
So there's no way Iowans will know what these folks have been released for other than rumor and innuendo?
Again, I think that question is best posed to the Attorney General's office. I'm not an attorney, and that's a legal question that I don't have an answer to.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Point taken. I just spoke my co-chair, and if you'd like the Attorney General to come before the committee. Okay, I have a few questions for both of you. Like Senator McCoy asked of Paul, Doug, would you explain, are you in charge of all of General Services Enterprise through your position title?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
Okay, and who hired you?
Mike Carroll.
And were you recruited or did you apply for the position? Was it, I don't believe your position was posted.
I'm not certain if it was posted or not. I know that I was recruited for the position.
You were recruited for the position. Okay. And who helped prep you, both of you, for the hearing before the Oversight Committee?
Before the Oversight Committee, we had 2 meetings, I believe. I need to check my schedule to be aware of the 2 meetings with members of the iGov staff, so we would understand the process, so we could be understand the process, and so we could be prepared to answer your questions.
Okay, who were they?
I don't know their names. I know that Jimmy Centers was a member of that team.
So their PR person?
I'm not certain of his position. It was the first time I had met him.
Okay.
And I believe Brenna Finley was in the room for that, but I don't know who the other individuals were by name.
Was the chief of staff Matt Hennish in those meetings?
He was, yes. He was in there. He was in the room for one and maybe part of another, and I believe that there was 2. But I have to confirm that.
And was the head of the Department of Management, Dave Ritter, in those meetings as well?
No, ma'am, he was not.
Okay, was there anyone else from the governor's office in the prep session?
There was another individual, but I'm sorry, I don't know his name.
So another gentleman from the governor's office?
It was a male, yes, and I believe that he worked in iGov in some capacity, but I'm not certain.
Okay. Paul, do you know who was in there, who the other person is that he's?
No, I do not know.
Can't remember the name.
I don't have much interaction with the governor's staff, so I don't know the staff.
Were you in the same prep session that Doug was in? And then was Director Carroll in there as well?
Yes.
And who alerted you both that there was no hush money offered?
I was never aware of any money, confidentiality money whatsoever until I read it in one register.
Did Did the conversation of hush money or confidentiality settlements come up in your prep sessions with the governor's office?
When I recall from the prep sessions, it was about the focus of these sessions and how the format would work, and everyone was encouraged to tell the truth.
Who was responsible for implementing the reduction of force at DAS and the reorganizing? Who was involved in those planning sessions?
In the initial planning sessions, Director Carroll and myself had many of those. Our general counsel was Ryan Lamb. He would have been a part of that, and human resources staff members would have been a part of those. They weren't as formalized, ma'am, as far as an actual working group. We did spend a lot of time one-on-one or two-on-one having those discussions that are better serve taxpayers for construction projects.
Was anyone from the Department of Management involved in those planning sessions?
Not in the sessions that I were involved with. I'm not certain if at the director level in the Department of Management that there was conversations or not, but not that I was aware of.
And what about the governor's office?
No, ma'am, not that I was privy to.
Okay. Did you have documents that you used as you were planning this reduction in force at DAS and the reorganization? Did you have written documentation of kind of outlining the plan?
Not that I'm aware of. We did lots of whiteboard exercises and lots of generally just thinking out of the box on how we could better perform the duties of the construction area.
And give us a timeline of when these planning sessions were occurring.
I would think I was hired in March of 11, and we began having the conversation shortly after I arrived, and that went on through the time that there was an actual layoff.
Okay, so March 2011 through September of 2011 for the first round of the layoffs, correct?
That's correct. That's correct, I believe. I don't have calendars in front of me, but I believe those
Okay,
are correct.
and Paul, were you involved in those meetings as well?
In
In the
layoff
meetings
chart.
talking about reduction in force and reorganizing the DAS, were you involved in those discussions?
Off and on I was.
Okay. And at what time, Doug, at what time did you start looking for your new employees to replace the people that you were letting go?
Approximately 30 days before the layoff notice was, or the layoff procedures were actually put into place.
So you started looking for them 30 days before September 1st?
That's correct. And before the, and again, ma'am, I don't have my calendars with me. Before the September 3rd, there was an actual filing of the layoff intent, and I don't have the particular dates for that, but it would have been prior to that.
So September 1st, so you're saying you started looking for them around August 1st?
That would be correct, I believe.
Okay, I have emails showing that you offered them the positions in July.
That certainly could have been, again, I don't have my calendar in front of me, but we're talking about the same
Okay.
time frame.
Okay.
It would have been a summer process, correct?
And those positions, if the register's coverage this weekend were correct, it appeared that those positions were not advertised, didn't advertise with us.
Yeah, it was determined through the state process that they were non-merit covered positions.
How did you find these gentlemen?
They were recommended to me,
Who recommended them to you?
multiple people throughout the industry.
Did they come with recommendation letters?
I spoke to folks that had worked with them and for them, certainly, but it wasn't a formalized process.
Were they recommended to you by Ryan Lamb?
Ryan Lamb had acquaintance with two of those individuals,
Which two?
Evan Hagan and Calvin Miller, I believe. And I'm not sure if Ryan Lamb had any acquaintance with the third individual.
Okay. Talk to me a little bit about both of your roles with the Iowa Veterans Home. Because around this time period, there was an article in the Cedar Rapids Gazette that started showing that there were concerns that we might lose federal funding for the construction projects that were underway up there June 24th, 2011. And shortly after that, an RFP was issued for redesign work with a very short window of time. Did you write that RFP?
I was involved with the drafting of an RFP to find assistance in overseeing how the project was working. because we were concerned about the outcomes, both ourselves and the staff of the Veterans Home.
And what was the purpose of that RFP? What was the purpose of, what were you looking for?
We were having challenges with schedule, we were having challenges with project budget, we were having potential challenges with quality issues. So the entire job, the entire coordination of the job was in question at that time. We were concerned.
And who told you to write the RFP?
I don't know that anyone would have told me to. I certainly would have consulted with folks within the agency to see if that was the best step. If we're talking about the same RFP, there's been multiple RFPs written, I believe, for the Iowa Veterans Zone.
This was the RFP that was issued the day after the 4th of July, on July 5th. That was only posted until July 11th. Very short.
Does it happen to indicate what the scope of work would be, or the? I just want to make sure we're discussing the same RFP.
Maybe while we're digging for that, could you tell me what the normal process is for putting together an RFP? How many people are involved, how it gets posted? Could you explain that to me?
Sure. First, there's an RFP process and an RFB process. Sometimes those two terms get interchanged. There's also particular processes depending on the scope of work as it pertains to the price of the project or the price of the work.
Okay, and is there typically more than one person involved in putting together an RFP?
Typically there is, but again, depending on which exact RFP or RFB we're speaking of.
Okay.
One is there's a request for proposal, and the other is a request for bid.
So this RFP in particular, we're trying to find that was only online for just a few days. I'm sure you probably remember it.
I'm sorry, I just want to make sure that
Okay.
I'm understanding it was several years ago, ma'am. There's lots of things that have happened since then.
See if I can find it here. All right, here it is. Project programming, preliminary design, cost estimate, and related services. Does that sound
Yeah,
familiar?
was my name listed as a respondent or on the document?
Your name is listed, it said it was only valid from July 5th through July 11th.
Okay, and what does it indicate if there's an RFP or an RFB, just so we're speaking? I don't have a document in front of me.
RFP, it has a number here.
Sure. So that would have been a request for proposal.
What's the typical timeline for issuing, or how long are RFPs usually put online for private sector to be able to have an opportunity to get in a product?
Well, a request for proposal typically would take 7 to 14 days if it was, depending on the size of the project, much less if it was a smaller scope of work or a smaller expenditure of money.
That it would only be posted for a business to find out about it for 7.
Perhaps, yes.
I thought we had a policy on the number of these things that we posted. Is that?
There certainly could be. I'm not aware of that. I do very few RFPs or RFPs. Typically, my staff members do that.
Okay, and then who posted this for you? Did you post it yourself?
I would have assumed that it was posted through the state procurement area, but I'm not for certain.
So, did you say if anyone else was on the team besides yourself in writing that RFP?
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I don't recall that.
Do you remember who received the RFP to fix the design problems that you had concerns of over there?
No, ma'am, I don't. Again, it was 3 years ago. I don't have immediate recollection of that specific RFP. I can certainly go back through our files and respond fully to all that information. We're not trying to divert the question. I just want to make sure I'm answering it correctly, and I don't have full knowledge of that from my memory.
Paul, what was your involvement at the Veterans Home regarding the issues that you're having with the design work up there? It's my understanding that you were involved in that.
Yes. My involvement in the design and construction area prior to the change in the way we were doing business was to be the administrator for the area. And if we have problems, try to resolve them, look for solutions, analyze, evaluate.
So did you find that there were problems with the Iowa Veterans Home going on?
I think it's safe to say that we had some scheduling problems, some delay problems, for a variety of reasons. At this point, I don't recall specifically what they all were.
Did you ask Mr. Woodley to fast track an RFP to get the design work done quickly?
No.
No. Did you ask Mr. Woodley to get an RFP out the door?
I did not make that request. I'm not sure what you're referring to. That was not a decision made by me, if that's your question.
Okay. So typically, if you're doing an RFP, wouldn't you involve a project manager in putting together the specs for the RFP?
Typically, we would either use templates from our past requests, or we would just use our industry knowledge to do that.
Okay, and so the person that was on the job site was not involved on this?
I don't recall if they were or were not, ma'am.
Okay, all right. Could we go back just a minute to the 3 people that you hired? You said 2 of them were friends with Ryan Lamb, or maybe I used friends. 2 were recommended by Ryan Lamb. Who else recommended the 3 hires that you?
I recall that the other individuals were recommended, but I don't remember exactly who at the time.
You don't remember who brought their names? Did Mike Carroll?
No, I don't believe Mike Carroll did. Mike wasn't involved with that hiring process. My intent at the time was to try and find individuals that were skilled in the job market that would be willing to come and work for the state and to undertake our new methodologies.
Mr. Carlson, who hired you for your position?
The one I currently hold?
Yes,
Director Carroll.
Director Carroll. And on what date did you begin your position at DAS in this new position?
I believe sometime in 2012.
Sometime.
I don't recall the specific date, if that's your question.
Okay, I noticed it was missing from the report, but I understand the position was not advertised, but it didn't put your start date in the report that was released. You don't remember when you started?
I don't recall the specific date. I believe it was right after the first of the year, 2012.
Okay. And Mr. Woodley had talked about who helped prepare him for the meeting. Were the names that Mr. Woodley mentioned the same names of people that were involved? Were you in those same meetings preparing for this meeting, or were there different names?
I believe I was in the same meetings.
You believe or you don't?
I was in the same meetings.
What was your role in the reduction in force decisions that were made?
Essentially, my role was to provide layoff notice to the employees that were laid off.
So you had the fun job of letting these people know that they were that they were laid off. What materials did you provide for these people? Walk us through the notification process and who was involved in that.
Our human resources area assembled a packet of information regarding assistance that was available, could be made available to the employees. Each employee received that packet of information. I'm not sure what else you would like. I mean, when they were given notice, they were told that they would be maintained on the state payroll for a period of 20 days.